So, SRAM's got a few changes, and they go kinda wild, which finally makes the Hunter F6 a viable pick for Araby again, but even that comes with some problems. Either way, starting with the main attraction, unlike before where SRAMs could barely go 1 kilometer, now depending on closing speed, they can hit people 2 kilometers away or more, but usually 1.5 of the rear. That's thanks to the fuse being changed from a distance-based one to a time-based one that goes off right after fuel runs out, now making spiking people on a dive or firing at high altitude almost a guaranteed kill. Almost being the keyword. These things have their quirks. They are extremely flare hungry, locking onto any fired missile or even wreck on the ground and missing your target. Thankfully though, there's not a lot of this BR with flares, so it's not the biggest of problems, though somehow, being as sensitive as they only are capable of rear aspect locks and will lose track of planes, even going inside aspect. The only exception being VTOL aircraft already thrust vectoring. Speaking of thrust vectoring though, that's how these missiles have to turn. The harder it pulls off the rail, the more fuel gets wasted and the shorter its range. The last problem, though, is a very unique one. On launch, they take a moment to stabilize before accelerating hard towards their target, which is fine most of the time, but if you're below about 550 to 650 kilometers an hour, they just tend to spaz out on launch, waste all their fuel, lose their track, and blow up. Occasionally they do work at these speeds, but it's far from reliable. Thankfully, the Hunter doesn't tend to go below 600 kilometers an hour, so it's only really a problem in stall fights or reversals. But those should be the last resort, because if you forgot, you are flying a Hunter at 9.7 without any flares. If you've gotten that slow, you're either living on borrowed time or fighting the last guy in the match. Sure, you could take rockets and they act like flares, but they're not 100% reliable, and some of those high-G missiles, there's just nothing you could do about it. It's not like the Hunter is bad or anything, it holds its energy fairly well to where most supersonics, especially deltas like the F-106 and Mirage, will just fall out of the sky in a rate fight. You can even dogfight conventional F-100s, F-105s, MiG-19s, or even Su-7s, but that will 100% depend on the merge. They all bleed more speed than you do, and even more so once they're slow. So if you get caught up by an AOA terrorist, you're just not maneuverable enough to get out of its guns, let alone bleed enough speed to pull off a reversal. You have to play this thing like, well, a Hunter. Wait for the chance to ambush, then take the shot. But even that's betrayed by not really being fast enough to jump in and out of the fight. All that with the cherry on top of Aiden's being a bit more on the sparky side right now, just to tilt you that little bit harder. On a more meta level though, this thing is very temperamental in the kinds of games you'll get. Sometimes you'll spike people with all 4 SRAMs and have no sparks go on, sometimes you will be singled out and chased to the ends of the earth until you die and there is nothing you can do about that. Having even one squad mate to get that pressure off your back makes this thing a much, much better experience in my opinion.